You'll hear more about that in a minute. We have a great lineup today. I really want to thank you all for being here. This event is a dream come true. Cloud Communications Alliance, we plan this. This is an event planned by service providers for service providers. Okay, we have some great analysts. We have some great speakers, some guest speakers. But the best thing we got is the next speaker coming up, who's Clark Peterson, our chairman, my boss. Clark, come on.
Hello. Okay. Thanks, Joe, and I appreciate it. Great venue, and Joe's done a ton of work to pull this off, get us here at the W Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, and in prime time here is great. So thank you, Joe, and all your work, and you'll see more of Joe's work here as we go along through the day and tonight and tomorrow. So. But like Joe said, welcome to the first Cloud Connections 2023. This is the inaugural event that CCA has done for this new brand of Cloud Connections. I feel like we should have like a picture of everybody who attended the first event, right? Maybe we could do like a big pyramid type of on each other's shoulders, but it's really going to be memorable. I think we really spent a lot of time and money to pull off what we think is just an incredible group of speakers and experts in the field and analysts in the field and financial people in the field, and I think you'll see just really the level of content here is really unparalleled from anything we've done in the past. So again, that's me. So we're the CCA, Cloud Communications Alliance, been around since 2009, and we really look to fill a void in this space. We think of having a conference that's not here to meet customers, that's not here to meet agents, right? This is here to have the top industry leaders have a chance to network, be able to learn from the experts, and really have a real strategy session among the top people in the field. So we're at about 125 or so members. We add a new member almost every week. About half of us are international now, and half of us are domestic US. So continues to grow really throughout the world. So our theme is Cloud Communications at a Crossroad. It's really an interesting time and why we're at a crossroad. When you think about how we're evolving here, this was actually a restaurant I was at in Odense, Denmark. Anybody been to Odense? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Odense. So I went to this restaurant, I see this whole wall painted like this of how man's evolved. And I thought, Cloud Communications is hopefully going to evolve better than man's depicted here, right? We're at a crossroads because the last 3 years have been really abnormal, right? It's when you think about what's happened, both positive and negative. We had COVID really was an artificial stimulus for what a lot of us had incredible years of growth during COVID, unlike most industries, right? To be able to have years where everybody all of a sudden had to go work from home, and they all said, "How do we do this?" And I think I'm still getting a lot of echo, huh? Getting a lot of echo? It was just me. Yeah. Maybe decrease my echo. My vibrato. But this industry really answered the call as far as how does everybody work from home, like in a matter of weeks. And this industry stepped up and got everybody working from home. The PBX is in the cloud, and the collaboration tools in the cloud, and Zoom, you'll hear from tomorrow, all of a sudden became a household name within weeks, right? I mean, this industry was really took on a huge role there in what happened with COVID. Major new cloud providers now, it's not voice providers doing cloud communications. Now it's cloud providers doing communications, right? With Google, Amazon, everybody moving into the space here. The whole SMB side now is up in the 70% penetration. We look at like 10 users and lower, right? So it's all changed, and everyone's figuring out, how do I now go to market? Do I focus on verticals? Do I go mid-market, large enterprise? Where do I play from a market segmentation point? The features and solution sets are now, normal UC&C, unified communications collaboration. It's kind of table stakes. You can't just do that, right? You have CPaaS and CCaaS and APIs and the video. Hybrid office, right, is a big deal. Mobility, we'll hear a lot about that from Dave Michaels, right? CCaaS is kind of a profitability. You lead with CCaaS and then provide these other features, right, to target the right markets. So many questions here to answer, and you're going to get the answers in this meeting. We hope. We think we put together a star-studded group of people to answer these questions. And then Microsoft, we have a couple sessions on Microsoft. Are they a friend, are they a foe, are they a partner, it's just announced investment with, with Open API, right, ChatGPT, and be able to, $10 billion investment there. Now all of a sudden Google's raised red flags. We got to respond. There's a lot going on here with the big guys, right? The first person who's going to answer some of these questions is going to come after me with Mike Tesla, right? Where's this going? Where's the future? Mike's going to talk about reinventing the future of unified communications. This is a survey we did just this year with all the CCA members. They said, who's your top competitors now? Who's your top competitors in 5 years? So interesting to see are viewed as top competitors that aren't top competitors right now. And then you see the CPaaS players coming in viewed as top competitors in the future. So it's all going to change, right? Completely new landscape, new competitors. We go away from this artificial stimulus of COVID and all that's helped us with. And now what's the new normal going to be? Mike's going to help us see that future. The competitive field as far as platforms, what's going to happen, right? Do you need to have a proprietary platform? Is it better to use someone else's platform and focus on your own solutions, right? Do I have my own cloud? Do I use someone else's cloud? Do I partner with someone and just create a kind of a hybrid solution there? Do I do full resale? So there's going to be a platform discussion there. Future of platforms. Brian Bueller, one of the most experts in the field as far as platforms, is a really fascinating person to listen to. We'll speak from Allianza, Chris from Microsoft, Patrick from 2600 Hertz, and Dave Michaels will moderate. So really interesting discussion of where we're going on the platform side. When you look at, this is one from our last survey too, you looked at about half of the members of the CCA have a proprietary platform, and if you look at the orange and gray there, it's about the other half are using some form of another person's platform. So and others are vendors who are not service providers, right? But that right-hand side there is kind of half and half as far as how they view platforms. So where's that going? Where's that where are those triangles in that chart going to morph in the future here? You'll hear on the platform discussion. Mobility, right? Ericsson spent $6.2 billion buying Vonage recently. Really they were interested in the CPaaS side of Vonage and the developer ecosystem that it has. Internet of Things, they look at CPaaS as potentially helping be the network for IoT devices to connect. So we'll have a lot of discussion about mobility that Mike will talk. We also have Sanjay from Vonage on one of the panels. So you're hear from him. Mavinator about Telestacks, interesting move there, kind of a mobile guy buying a CPaaS provider. 5G, how's that going to change the game, right? I'm sure Dave Michaels will talk a lot about that. The cellular evolved from traditional cellular networks to almost a VoIP network, riding over the data channel. Now that the 5G data channels become so strong, you start to have more ubiquitous handoffs between, Verizon just announced kind of their kind of new mobile standard there that allows kind of Wi-Fi from cellular to Wi-Fi, all these handoffs that have become more simplified and ubiquitous. You got all the things going on the satellite side. I'm involved with some of these guys who have invested in the satellite side, and just, high-speed internet is going to be ubiquitous worldwide, right? Handing off will be much more easy, and you'll be able to have internet essentially wherever you go. So how does that affect communications, right? It'll be dramatic. So Dave Michaels is going to talk about that. And if you read talking points that we sent out before your flights there, you saw a lot of really interesting stories there. The economic landscape, right? So last week, the World Bank said global economy is perilously close to falling into recession, right? But then Goldman Sachs the same day came out and said, we don't think there's going to be a Euro recession like we thought. But then the next day, they had a huge layoffs at Goldman Sachs themselves. Right? Where do they really think this is going? Layoffs are up 172% from last year. Capital investments, capital markets extremely tight. Cost of money is up 300% from a year ago. And there's inflationary pressure on all of us, right, with our underlying costs going up. So, how do you navigate those waters? We have Jordan and Jerry, two of the principals there, Q Advisors, going to give us some really great economic outlooks and help us at a really business level. How do you position your business for the future despite all these economic variables? On the distribution side, right? I mean, COVID, no one was going door to door with direct salespeople during COVID, right? Because nobody was home. They were literally home. Nobody's home with the office, right? So, it changed everything, and distribution's changed a lot. Jan, who's one of the experts, if not the expert, right, on indirect channel and distribution overall, is going to talk to us, and we look forward to some great strategic discussion there. This was one of the surveys as well. It's interesting where the CCA members thought distribution was going. When you look at, 83% expect the cloud communications market to grow in the next 12 months, 46% expect the number of providers to decrease, so consolidation, right? And you see some of the deals that have been done. These are just some of the CCA members who've had some mergers and acquisitions. It's probably like 10%. I mean, there's been a lot of CCA members, a lot from these meetings meet each other and do deals, right? So, but you can see the highest bar graph there, address new vertical markets as a strategy, launching into new geographical areas, increase indirect sales, some of the things that the CCA members plan to do in this coming year. Government policies, right? We have stir shake and we have all of these different things that could negatively affect you from a regulatory side if you're not prepared. So we have really a star-studded group here. When you look at this group of, Mike Pryor, Jonathan, Glenn Richards, Christopher, Mark Iannuzzi, who leads this for the CCA. This is a great group if you want to learn how to navigate these regulatory waters. You won't find a better group here who knows this inside and out. So we'll have them talking about the regulatory side. On the CPaaS side, we have the first ever CPaaS showcase that Kevin Nethercott's running for us, right? CPaaS, is it a protocol or is it a solution? How do you integrate CCaaS, CPaaS, UCaaS? Microsoft just invested, like I said, the $10 billion in Chat GPT and OpenAI, and how that ties into the CPaaS side. But we asked, I think one of the dilemmas with CPaaS is how to use it. What's a true solution? How do you monetize it? And so we asked Kevin to put together really an incredible group of CPaaS providers and actually create solutions to demo at this event. So they're going to show real world solutions. We're going to have judging. We have $15,000 in prizes, for the winners of it. And so this is to really show you how you can take CPaaS as a protocol, platform, whatever you want to talk, but turn it into a solution that drives revenue, right? And so that would be a great showcase and the first one we've ever done like that. Marketing, we have Evan here in the front row, one of the foremost kind of influencers in our space from a social media standpoint, and it'll be great to kind of hear how do you harness the power of social media marketing this way. I mean, that's where it's going, right? I mean, it's interesting. I love this statement. A brand is no longer what we tell a customer it is. It's what customers tell each other it is, right? I just love that statement. And if you look at these numbers of 67%, that look to the social media before they make any decision. I know I can't go to eat with my daughters unless they tell me first from their research on social media where we should go for dinner with, who has the best food, the best rankings, or whatever. I mean, they have to go there. That's their credible source for food, no matter what dad tells them that he likes, right? So these numbers are incredible, and it's just growing with the next generations. And so Evan's going to kind of help us understand how to harness all that. The future, tomorrow morning we'll have Thomas Gray talk to us, who's a futurist, and I think really one of the foremost people to help us understand just in general where we're heading in from a technology standpoint, the world heading on multiple facets. So it'll be great to hear from Thomas and kind of get a view of where this is going. We also have, and you see here probably a bigger group and a more formal group of analysts than you've ever seen in a meeting in our space, right? We'll have Dave Michaels lead here with Elka Popova, an analyst view of the UCaaS market, where it's all going, right? You'll see some other panels here with some of the top analysts in the field, but they'll kind of show us the future from an analyst standpoint as well here. And so we're really looking forward to that. A lot of us, we haven't seen each other since, I think, Miami or Washington, D.C. before COVID, right? To have some of the analysts all come together again for this meeting is great. Microsoft, friend or foe, right? That's a big question for everybody. They're formidable, they're doing these deals. Google's nervous about the Chat GPT announcement of Microsoft, so a lot happening there. And how do you navigate that? So the answer to that is going to be hopefully provided here by Mark Schuler, who came out of retirement from Forrester there to be at our meeting today, and one of the foremost experts on this to be able to talk to us about his view on Microsoft and where that's going. And Matt Townend, who you all know here, probably have been in our meetings in the past, where we partnered with Cavell in some great meetings. Just did one in Chicago, that was awesome. Matt's going to talk to us about his view on Microsoft as well. So you get a couple, top analysts in the business, both from this side of the pond and the other side of the pond, and really represent the world on where's this all going with Microsoft and how should you be prepared. Zoom, like I said, Zoom became a household name with COVID almost overnight, right? Everybody used Zoom. The other day, somebody sent me an invite for a conference call that wasn't a video conference call. And I was looking at this like, what do I do with this? Am I supposed to just like talk to this person on a conference bridge? I haven't done that in 2 or 3 years. It's not a video call. What do I do with this? And so it really has become the standard. Is video the new voice, right? Is it how we communicate now going forward? Is these Zoom conference calls and the like of it, with all the collaboration tools that are out there? And what comes next, right? Zoom One that has chat, phone, meetings, whiteboard. How do you play with something like that? So we really look forward to hearing Zoom tomorrow, and kind of a little bit of the future where this is going on the video side and overall collaboration side with Zoom. And lastly here, show me the money. CPaaS is really one of the most profitable parts of cloud communications. A lot of people are leading with that now, and it's evolving, especially as you start to have CPaaS with CCaaS and all the things that can happen there. So look at this panel here, right? Dave Michaels here, a lead analyst, Art Schuler, I mentioned, Blair Pleasant, so great to have Blair back, Elka that I mentioned, and Matt. What a star-studded analyst group here. So if you really want to learn about CCaaS, you're not going to have a better group anywhere pulled together than this group talking about CPaaS tomorrow. So we look forward to that. And lastly, how do we have fun while we're doing all this? We're going to start tonight by a boat cruise, dinner boat cruise, so it should be fun. I don't know if we have live festivals, so please don't fall overboard, just drink responsibly, so it should be great. We want to take advantage of this incredible venue to be here right on the ocean and be able to go out and take down a dinner cruise. So we're looking forward to, an unprecedented Cloud Connections 2023 is our inaugural event, and I appreciate all the helpful work that's gone into making this such a star-studded event. And so I'll turn the time over now to Mike Tesler, who's going to start to tell us about the future. So Mike.
Thanks. Good morning. Morning. Wow. Conference room. Wow, it's been a while. So I was thinking last night that I was thanking Joe for inviting me or volunteering me to present. And I told him that's probably the only person I would agree to, Evan Clark, that come up and do this. So, and also the challenge of trying to tell a room of folks that are deep in an industry that the future is fraught with disaster. So thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that. I think the thing that I try to focus on here is kind of reinventing. I actually said, okay, let me look up what the word reinvent means. It means to change something so dramatically that it can't be recognized. So that's my attempt in the next 30 minutes. Let me know if I pass or fail. So that's the objective. So that's it. That's my objective. When I started preparing for this, don't you love those pictures? I look so good in there. All of them. I thought back and I said, okay, let's go back in history. And then I was shocked that it's actually been 25 years since Scott and I started BroadSoft. That's that's a quarter of a century, and it makes me feel really old. But it's clear that sometimes we think this is kind of we've been in it, we're running it. We've been doing this for a really long time. It's an industry that's fairly mature, Scott and I are really happy and proud to have kind of the interesting part of this industry, and now we're kind of on the sidelines advising folks. But it has been a long time. So reinventing is not an easy thing when you've been doing this for that long. I think one of the things when I looked at the 25 years, I thought about kind of the different phases of the 25 years of the waves of unified communications. Probably the most, like the formative years, the first 10 years, 98 to 2008, was really kind of figuring out the technology, figuring out the protocols. When we started, this whole thing, this SIP thing didn't even exist. Everybody was playing around with protocols like H323, which I think most young people never heard of. And we didn't have any, I remember the first time we made a phone call, we didn't even have a device that spoke SIP. So, it's like, lots of folks in the room here really helped us build devices that interoperated. The analysts here will remember that we didn't have names for anything. We had these funny names like soft switches, and we kept going through name after name trying to find what the hell. Like at BroadSoft, we didn't know what the hell to call the thing we built. So it was like, okay, when people said it's a PBX, wow, we didn't like that. It's a Centrex, yuck. Who was going to call it Centrex? But that was a really interesting time, and kind of a formative time. And then the second wave, really 2008 to 2018, really became a time when it became a business. We actually saw lots of folks in this room started to become successful. We started seeing the growth across all the geos around the world. We started selling in Europe more, and we started growing in Asia more, etc. And we started seeing growth in all the segments, so the small business, medium, large. We saw lots of activity, and we saw, from our very early adopter partners to the larger, incumbents, Verizon's, AT&T's, etc., BT's, kind of enter the business during this interval. And then we had this, obviously, in 2018 into the present, really kind of the promise of unified communications. Before that, it was really anchored around voice. We really have, although we had video, we had messaging, clearly the pandemic became a huge driver for the introduction of video. I remember we would go out and we would pitch video. Even our service provider partners, while they were selling video, they would hardly ever use video inside. And as I think Craig is here, he can tell you, I love using video because I can see my sales guys sweat across a few time zones, and I can make sure that they were actually telling me the truth. So that was my love for video early on. So let me talk about kind of before I try to figure out the future. I want to figure out what are some of the top my top five observations for the market right now that kind of set up how do we define the future. So first of all, I think Clark made mention of it. You've got the emergence of very large players. Obviously, the entry of Microsoft is a pretty big factor in the industry, certainly influencing larger enterprise buyers. And you have also just the scale advantages of folks like RingCentral, Zoom, and obviously my previous employer, Cisco, all operating in fairly large scale. And so how do the rest of the industry work with these I call them big kids on the block? Clearly, as I mentioned before, really kind of the emergence over the last couple of years of the full suite. You can't go to market with just voice. You have to go to market with voice, video, messaging, and now more and more elements of CPaaS and contact center or care. Lots more technology required in the solution. It's quite a challenge to sell and market support a fairly large suite. The pandemic introduced remote work, which was great, but also introduced lots of challenges. How do you support remote employees? While we're, as an industry, as Clark mentioned, we were super responsive on, kind of responding to the pandemic and using videos and meetings as a new way to really get together. Lots of new capabilities, but now remote work is kind of built in. Like, there's no point in arguing, hybrid, whatever is there. Clearly one of the things that's has been emerging for a long time, surprisingly slow for folks who know what the activities that we did at BroadSoft. Mobility and mobile integrated solutions have taken a really long time, but we think that's here now. We think mobile operators get it. Now the question is, how successful will that be, packaging-wise, offer-wise, etc. But how many people? I don't know how many people have actually a house or PSTN. PSTN is dead. And although people say PSTN has been dead for a while, it hasn't been dead for a number of us. And then, interesting thing, the last one is, when we were selling a while ago, we would go into clients and it was greenfield. They had nothing. They had like that old junk, they had stuff in the closet, under the desk, PBXs in the back room. Now you go into an account, they probably have something already deployed, and now we've got to change how we sell, hybrid networking, how we interwork, how do you augment other people's solutions. So this idea that it's much more of a brownfield than it was a greenfield. And as Clark said, penetration rates in SMB are super high. So you're either going to displace someone or you got to figure out a way to augment their solution. So that's been a pretty big change in the market in the last, as the penetration rates have got higher and higher. And it's certainly true as you get to larger enterprises, you really have to figure out how to work around what is currently already there. So what is all this, as Clark was saying, we got lots more competition, higher penetration rates, and obviously some, lowering prices as the market gets more competitive. It's created kind of a very challenging market, and lots of folks call me and say, what should I do? Where should I go? What's the next step? What strategy do I do to navigate around all this? And so I'm going to try to answer that this morning. And so lots of folks feel it's kind of, we're in this kind of dark cloud era. And so what should we do? And hopefully I will provide a couple of pathways for you and let me know if that works. So first thing I would say is that this is something that I would normally do as a very engaged process of understanding a particular company's capabilities, strengths, weaknesses, markets, trends. And together with my friends at True North, we usually do this. We just get paid for this. So remember, this is free advice. So you know what the value of free advice is going to be, right? The only thing that's frustrating about this picture, I realized last time I was looking, why am I the shortest guy? I don't understand that either. Like, I don't understand how that works. I picked bad partners. So anyways. So when you think about, when I thought about the strategic choices for a service provider in the UC space, you kind of like, you open the business textbook and you come up with three possibilities. You could be on price, you could be on brand, or you could be on functionality features. Being on price is hard, and I think some folks have looked at and acquired platforms, built their own platforms to control costs around licensing from vendors, like things they used to do, and kind of control that cost. But of course, there's a risk there. You got scale issues, then you have development costs, you got support costs, development, you got to build wrappers, etc. And so clearly, competing on price helps grow the market, but it can be fairly destructive and difficult to execute. And frankly, one of the biggest elements, as you guys fairly know, I'm telling you anything new, one of the big elements on the price side, all those people used to say to me, hey, software licensing is really expensive, but the reality is the cost of customer acquisition, marketing, sales far outweighs the platform, and how do you actually lower the price of customer acquisition? And that really becomes the second element, which is, can you compete on brand? And this is a tried and true method, and if I want to sell running shoes and I've got a bunch of how do I now separate from the rest? It's marketing. How do I create a brand? How do I create affinity to that brand? Something that telecommunications providers don't do a great job of, but allow you to say, okay, let me focus on a particular segment, vertical, etc., and create affinity to that brand. Again, very difficult and sometimes inexpensive, and so you need to have a certain amount of scale and capability. So that's the second kind of otherwise I wouldn't speak about features. So anyways, so that's the focus of the rest of my session. So how do you change the game? So I'll talk about four ideas that I put together. First one is how do you become a next generation service provider? I'll talk a little bit about that. Hyper focus on a vertical, focus on customer experience, and the last one's going to call squeeze more value for your customers. And these are four kind of different little vignettes, possible visions for the future, where you could kind of execute, and then you might want to think about mixing and matching these various capabilities. And what I'll do is, in some of these cases, I'll actually identify particular companies Not because I'm endorsing companies, not trying to pitch anything, but just basically kind of give you something. Instead of talking theoretical, give you something real to talk to look at and understand. So the first one is becoming a next generation service provider. And the idea here is that lots of us are selling unified communications, applications, capabilities, collaboration to businesses. But the businesses actually then have to procure the bandwidth, the mobile devices, the security, all the other elements that actually run their business. And frankly, we've made it really easy to actually procure cloud voice, cloud messaging, meetings, etc. It's really not that complicated. The rest of the capability for those small businesses is damn hard. How do you buy all this stuff? How do you make sure it all works? How do you make sure you have QoS? How do you make sure you support remote employees with enough bandwidth at home? How do you make sure those employees have security? VPNs, capabilities, SASE, lots of stuff out there that small businesses don't have the expertise and capabilities. And so the idea here is, can you in fact deliver something we call safe and secure, always on networking? And the idea being, okay, I want to sell the applications, but I need to bring the rest of the stack. Now, that also brings lots of complexity because lots of folks, we like the over-the-top world. We don't like to sell broadband, etc. But the reality is, this is what the customers need us to do as an industry. Is really think about how do you bring all the elements together to provide safe and secure, always on networking. So your end users can actually have a video call, make a phone call, have a contact. I don't know how many people, I just went through this week. Call a contact center, you get connected after your 8-minute wait, and you get disconnected. What the F is that?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Okay, I just don't get. I think it's programmed. It's like, oh, I saw that call. Click. That was a 30-second success. But it's like, and what happens is you've got agents working at home with bad internet, and you lose connectivity. So is it really? It's not very effective. So always on networking capabilities. And how do you build that? Now the challenge here is there's a lot to bring together. And as service providers, you need to select, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to resell? What am I going to refer? What capabilities do I bring together in this always on networking stack? But I think this is clearly something where, and I call this option the one down. So this is take the applications and build everything below it from connectivity, broadband, security, authentication, all kinds of things that our customers are looking for and are much more challenged with than actually, what we do in terms of collaboration, which has turned out to be fairly easy to procure and understand. We've done a good job of marketing and explaining that capability to folks, but the rest of it is quite complex, complicated, and confusing. So that's my one down option for you. Now, now I have three what I call kind of three up, which is, okay, take where you are in the application layer and add to it and so on. And first of all is kind of hyper-focused on a vertical. I have two examples here in two different areas. One is a company called Weave, you guys may be familiar with, who have centered their offer around an appointment book. So they will go after businesses that really work, like the main part of the business is getting people, getting clients into the appointment book, whether that's doctors, dentists, hairdressers, whatever you want, and get them in the appointment book, and manage that appointment book, make sure they show up for their appointments, etc. And telephony is really kind of a supporting element to the solution. So the appointment book, it really becomes the key value add. Whereas, if you sell voice first, then someone has to buy an appointment book and an SMS and all these other pieces. These guys have been fairly successful. And by being very vertically focused, significantly lowering their cost of acquisition. So that you can now have referenceable customers one after the other. So folks are familiar with that company. I think they've done fairly well in executing and being profitable through that execution. The other one, I just met some folks from this company called Service Titan. They started with, again, far away from telephony, far away from features, really providing a support system, a business support system for the trade industry. So your landscaper, your carpenter, your plumber. It really lacks the kind of operational support systems. They provide this as a cloud service. Now, of course, all of those folks need telephony, need messaging, need capabilities, and now they've kind of plugged that capability into the service type offer, and now they're adding voice and communications as an add-on. So you can see this is kind of a hyper-focused way of approaching. So is telephony, is communications collaboration the star or the supporting cast? So which side of the offer it is. And again, both of these are fairly successful in terms of lead generation marketing. And if you look at both these businesses, going after very, very small SMB, which is expensive to go after, with fairly effective marketing dollars. So again, vertical does work. I think a lot of people say, oh, vertical, yeah. But you gotta really buy into it. And this vertical is really a solution vertical versus when I go talking before about brand, you can say, hey, I want to be the best provider to doctors without really a lot of feature functionality, just in their terms and so on. There's a brand element of it, a marketing element. There's a feature functionality. This is definitely a feature functionality lead in terms of providing vertical capabilities. So kind of an interesting approach for kind of the next stage, next wave, the fourth generation of UC. The next area, which I think Clark mentioned, CPaaS, and sometimes I get a little bit concerned when we use that word because we immediately think of those big call centers I just mentioned with thousands of agents that work for a big insurance company or banks. And what I'm really thinking about here is the feature functionality capability that you build into supporting those small businesses in customer experience. So one of the things that I think we over-rotated in the unified communications space is we were most times focused on supporting the company itself, company and employees, kind of intra-company activity. And what we really need to think about is a lot of these small businesses, communications internally is fairly, if I'm working with Clark and I are in the same office, we don't need a lot of capabilities. We just knock on each other's door and talk to each other. But we have customers. We don't know we don't know what's happening with our customers. How do we support our customers more successfully? And we have this huge emergence of a contact center business, which is fairly formal, fairly elaborate, fairly has lots of business process. But there's a lot of customer support that kind of falls outside of your big formal contact center with agents, etc. And here, I'm talking about two companies with different areas. One of them, Kixie, which we'll present a little later, was really a focus of adding to the UCaaS so that you as a business knows what calls you've missed, what is the cost of those calls that you've missed, what is the lost basket, and how do you return those calls quickly and make sure as an owner of the business that you're able to get those lost sales back into your business. So again, clearly something you can do in a very big contact center, more of an informal day-to-day small business environment. How do you add something like that capability? So the Kixie guys are going to demonstrate that outside. And another company that I know, a company called Journey, that is providing an interesting capability of adding a digital channel to any voice call. So the idea being is, what's interesting in the industry is like if you're a bank and you have your bank app and you get stuck and you have to call the contact center, what happens is you create a completely new path. And whatever your app doesn't work. So why not be able from your app to be able to kind of bridge to the contact center, bridge to an agent, and actually conduct and be able to authenticate yourself on the app versus having to re-authenticate on the contact center agent and say, hey, go to this particular screen, etc. So bridging the mobile app world to the contact center capabilities. And in a small business environment, lots of small businesses, one of the actions they got to take is collect credit cards, get documents signed, all kinds of things like that. So how can you add these very kind of business process, kind of B2C capabilities to your UCaaS offer? These are some examples of how you can basically really focus what I call the customer experience. How do you support that small business to support their end users? So that's another area that I think is quite interesting. And frankly, there's a lot of tech startup area in this customer experience that lots of folks need to think about and work with and examine and understand. Lots of new tech here, lots more new tech in CX than there is in UCaaS. So if you think about kind of where the next wave of interesting stuff comes from here, I've seen people use video for, video in really interesting ways, object recognition in really interesting ways, all kinds of interesting capabilities to really support that B2C. There's lots of capabilities that are productized for very large businesses that have not been productized down to the small and medium market. So lots of capabilities in the customer experience arena. The third, I call up, is called squeeze more value. And I'll talk about two companies here. The idea here is you're selling a UCaaS solution, whether it's, who cares what UCaaS solution, that's a terrible thing for me to say, but, any of those, any UCaaS solution, and you want to basically be able to make sure that your customers get more value out of the capability they've acquired. And so, it's how do you adopt, how do you get them to adopt, how do you get them to use the functionality more effectively. And here I talk about two companies taking different approaches. The first one, Nulia. And what the Nulia guys have done, a good friend, Steve, who's running that, basically really concerned about the adoption of UCaaS and ensuring that employees really understand the feature functionality. So in the platform, you would define skills. Say, okay, Evan needs to be able to create a conference call and send a bill or set an appointment or something. And so very well-defined set of tasks that every employee needs to execute, and then really ensuring and monitoring the activity. This is not training, monitoring the activity on a real-time basis and say, hey, is Evan been able to do this effectively or not? And then drip in some capabilities and some tips along the way. So really, really tight feedback from the application itself to the adoption. So really understanding how to grow adoption. And really helping organizations with change management required to adopt new capabilities. So really squeezing that value. So you may have purchased a seat, but people aren't really using it effectively. And so really thinking from a line manager or almost an HR perspective, what are the skill sets that my employees need to have to be able to run their business and kind of move that along. So it's kind of interesting career development, capability, et cetera. The second company is a human intelligence company I just recently met. And what they are able to do through a very, very quick survey assessment, kind of a 10-minute assessment, is understand your personal communications preferences. How do I like to be communicated to? What's the channel? And what's my style? I like details. I don't like details. I like to be, what kind of tone the communication needs to be in, et cetera, for you to be successful in having a conversation with me. And organizations, everybody would take the assessment, publish it, so that if I need to talk to Clark, I'd say, okay, you know what? First, I got to present Clark the big picture, and then I got to go to details. If I go to details first, I'll lose him, and so on. So how do I do a better job? So really taking the communications channels that we all have and we've all built, and really squeezing more value, getting your employees to be more efficient, more effective in working together, not only on one-on-one, but on teams. So if I have a group of people who are meeting on a bridge, on a video bridge, and I can see the range of personalities in that meeting and say, wow, everybody is everybody's into the details, and so I'm going to start there. Okay, so really kind of adjust my communication style to be most effective. So quite an interesting capability. And for everybody here, I'm going to share my profile. So here I am. I'm a maverick. And I was going to say for anybody who's existed in the BroadSoft world that will resonate well to these some of the statements here. So I'll zip to the bottom, which is you have to show up to meetings on time and you have to show up to meetings prepared, right? So anybody who's worked in BroadSoft knows if you show up like 30 seconds late to a meeting, right, Dad? You get your ass kicked. You can testify to that, and you better be prepared. And if you come to a meeting and you're sitting around and you're actually adding no value, I will kick you out. I will ask you, why are you here? So definitely this thing in 10 minutes captured me well in terms of how I like to be communicated. What's the style? How do you start? Be prepared for lots of questions. I'm going to question your assumptions. I like to understand the big picture, but then I want to dig into the assumptions and understand it. So a really good example of how you can help your customers, once you've sold them a seat, how do you really get more, how do they get more value out of it? And now this is really, impacting the people aspects of this communication, not the feature functionality. Do I have a new feature in my meetings capability? This is really about how to make people more effective. And then what I try to do is kind of, I'm doing a whole bunch of different projects and a whole bunch of different related spaces. And it came to me with this idea of kind of this concept or idea of a retail-focused MSP. And kind of brings a lot of the various pieces together. So whatever kind of retail, quick serve restaurant, grocery, whatever that retail organization outlet looks like, these are all the things that are floating around in the industry around retail. And frankly, when I remember we were selling to retail, we would go to a quick serve restaurant and we would sell 2 open POTS lines. It's not very profitable, right? There's a lot of work to get, a Dunkin' Donuts to have 2 phone lines at $12 a line. Not a very successful. So really think about here is how do you grow the wallet around this particular customer, and how do you serve a bigger picture? So you have things like obviously bringing insights, like I mentioned on Pixie, digital signage. One of the things that we're doing in most of these cases is we have to connect to that location. We have to connect to the location. We have to provide broadband. We have to provide connectivity. Once you're already doing that, why not provide digital signage? We can provide a really interesting emerging area of edge compute capabilities inside these outlets. You can provide Wi-Fi connectivity for the guests. You can mine the Wi-Fi information for affinity. You can have customer engagement. I work on a project with EV charging in front of restaurants. And you can provide facial recognition to drive your retail analytics. This is not all this is all real stuff out there, but it's somebody saying, okay, I'm now driving a retail-focused MSP, and I'm going to go after a very large wallet. There's a whole bunch of other things that aren't mentioned here, things like point of sale, etc. Those are probably a little bit harder because they get really into business systems. This is really around the supporting the CX capabilities and the operations of a retail organization. How do I market? How do I find customers? How do I bring them into my store? How do I market more effectively? How do I service them more effectively? That is a much bigger picture than just providing 2 POTS lines to your quick serve restaurant, which is extremely, it's not profit, it's hard to do, it's expensive to get them rolled out, and it's easy to churn. I mean, it's not a really difficult thing that you replace your voice lines. You need to provide a lot more capability. And there's a lot of examples beyond just retail-focused MSP, but this is one that I have enough activity going on around it that I thought I would share. And so, in summary, I think that the UC market has clearly entered a mature phase. We're now 25 years old. We're an adult. It's time for you guys to reevaluate, all of us to reevaluate our strategy. What's our go-forward plan? And I really encourage folks. I'm lucky in the work I do. I get to meet lots of tech startups, lots of interesting technology emerging in the CX space. And a lot of it, obviously lots of folks, a lot of energy in the CX space on enterprise and formal contact centers. We're seeing more and more some of that being drifted down, commercialized, made simpler, better pricing models for the small and medium market, less formal contact centers. So quite an interesting number of companies emerging in that space. So with that, thanks everybody. Hopefully I've been able to provide some vision of the 4th wave. And if you want a copy of the presentation, just send a note to my True North email, info@truenorthadvisory.us. And thank you very much.
You can't get information like that anyplace else. Mike, thank you. That was It's funny, you know, it takes the old guy to tell us what's gonna happen in the future. Maybe because you've been there.
Old guy.
Our next session starts at 9:30. We have about 8 minutes. So if you guys want to do quick coffee after break, feel free to do that. Couple things. We have Wi-Fi here. If you need Wi-Fi, the code is.
Okay.